Will the current efforts of a global vaccination play a role in the establishment of the prophesied end-time world government? I have information to share on this topic from an insider at the United Nations on this edition of End of the Age. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you for joining me once again on this edition of End of the Age. Now, I'm going to be talking today about world government, about get off into the mark of the beast, a lot of different things, because we're seeing so many things happening right now that it's almost overwhelming. You've got to really step back and take a look at the big picture to see what's really going on. If you get caught up in some of these rabbit trails, I mean, it is almost overwhelming to you. So that's what we're going to do today on the program, is to step back and look at what's really going on the, on a global scale, to really see how it fits in Bible prophecy. Now, before we start today's program, I want to be very clear about something. I am not saying that the vaccination schemes by the World Health Organization, the United Nations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will be used to implement the mark of the beast. It certainly could aid in that, but at this point we simply don't know. However, I do want to show you how systems of more and more control of the global population are being put in place by a global governing body, which will lead to, or could be a precursor to, the mark of the beast system. So in light of Bible prophecy, it is something all of us should be aware of. And I'll probably reiterate this point throughout the program, because I want to make sure that I'm not saying that this is it, but it definitely could be something that leads to that, because we know that the full implementation of the mark of the beast system is a few years off yet. But the Antichrist will usurp authority over an already functioning system. So we can't wait till the time the Antichrist comes on the scene and then he starts to set up a system. That's not how it's going to work. There's already going to be a system functioning, a global numbering system that everybody will be a part of, the big majority of the world. And the Antichrist will usurp authority over that fully functioning system, and then he's going to begin to implement it, the mark of the beast, economically sanctioning people and things like that. So I just want to make sure you are, on today's program, I want to make sure you are aware of what is going on and how it correlates with Bible prophecy. Now, I want to tell you about a friend of mine. I have a friend, and we Endtime Ministries, he's a real good friend of mine. I have a friend, his name is Pastor Art Wilson. He pastors a church in Michigan, and he is a World Association of former United Nations interns and fellows. He is what you call a WAFUNIF, W-A-F-U-N-I-F. He's a goodwill ambassador at the United Nations. I talked to him this morning on the telephone, and he said that I could use his name. I called him, I said, look, I want to talk about what's going on up there. You participated in this meeting, but yet I didn't want to call your name on the radio. And he was like, man, go ahead. Well, we're past that. So I said, all right, if you start getting calls and things like that, you'll know what I said. But he told me that he participated in a meeting last week, and I'm going to go through the meeting here in just a moment. And it was a teleconference meeting with world leaders and global elites, and it was addressing global cooperation on the coronavirus vaccine. He said that in the meetings that he participated in. There were 3 days of meetings. In the meetings, the global elites and leaders of nations such as France, Germany, the UK, from the Middle East, Africa, South America, and on, all over the world, had a turn to speak in these meetings. The only ones that did not speak, didn't participate at all in the meetings, were the United States, Israel, and China. And we should be very thankful for that. And you'll see why as I go throughout the program. So according to Pastor Wilson, in the high-level meetings on Friday morning, he told me that the United Nations, basically, that the nations around the world, basically on the phone, swore an allegiance to the system to administer the vaccine, the coronavirus vaccine, in their respective sovereignties. In other words, the United Nations, they were setting up kind of a plan, and that they said, yes, absolutely, we're bought into the plan. But he termed it as swearing an allegiance, but they pledged to implement it in their country. And a very important statement, and I'll hold here because I want to mention this when we get back from the break. The Gates Foundation was in one of those private meetings. And so we'll talk about this point right here when we get back from the break, because I want you to understand what's going on. And this is insider information. This is one of my friends that is at the United Nations, so he knows what he's talking about.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank Endtime for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listen to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Experience the Holy Land in the most amazing way. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter for our upcoming Israel tour. For more information, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, Endtime Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
So in these meetings that my pastor friend, Pastor Art Wilson, participated in, he said that the Gates Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they were in a private meeting, and Melinda Gates, Bill Gates' wife, was the keynote speaker in one of those meetings. You'll say, well, what in the world does the Gates Foundation have to do with these United Nations meetings and these vaccinations that they're wanting all of the world to participate in? Well, I'll get there in just a moment, but the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was one of the original founders, or I should say Microsoft, which basically was Bill Gates, was one of the original founders of ID 2020, the United Nations effort to number every person that is not already numbered, every number on the planet, every person on the planet, to number them, and also involved in ID 2020 is a man, I'm trying to think of his name. I'll get to it here in a second, but he was over Gavi, which is one of the huge vaccine organizations. He sits on the board of directors for ID 2020, the United Nations effort to number every person on the planet. So now you can kind of get the big picture of what's going on here, why the Gates Foundation is involved in all these high-level meetings at the United Nations and these vaccines. They're tying ID 2020, the numbering of everybody, into helping track the people who are been immunized. And so you can kind of get an idea. They're all in this together, working for one common goal. So let me talk about the meetings real quick. I talked to Pastor Wilson this morning. The funny thing is, somebody sent me a video with him and another guy. Another guy was interviewing him, and it got me thinking about all this. Well, I knew about the meetings that he was in. I didn't know he was in the meetings. I knew about the meeting last week when it happened. I did research on it. I had read the articles. Somebody sent me this video. I called him this morning. He said, oh, yeah, I was in all those meetings. So once I got the inside scoop and found out what was going on, I thought, man, I got to tell everybody about these meetings on the radio. So here's the meetings. The Guardian reported that the U.S. stays away as the world leaders agree on action on the COVID-19 vaccine. You and I, here living in the United States, and I got people listening all over the world, and you just have to listen to this for a second. But those of us living here in the United States, we should be very thankful that the United States did not participate in these meetings. You know that President Trump cut off the funding for the World Health Organization, what was it, a week or two ago, because he said they were playing favorites with China and this, that, and the other. And so he said, hey, we're cutting off the funding. Well, when it come to this meeting last week, the United States didn't even participate. Well, I'm very thankful because all the other nations of the world besides China and Israel, they pledged allegiance to and said, yes, we will implement this vaccine program in our nations. The United States was not involved. So at the meeting, it was a video meeting seen as a global endorsement for the World Health Organization and a sign of Trump's isolation on the world stage. So the Trump's isolation, that's a very good thing to me as a United States citizen. I don't want to be a part of this. World leaders, in the meetings, world leaders agreed to cooperate on the coronavirus vaccine, but the U.S. did not take part. Global leaders have pledged to accelerate cooperation on a coronavirus vaccine and to share research, treatment, medicines across the globe. But the United States did not take part in the World Health Organization initiative in a sign of Donald Trump's increasing isolation on the global stage. Folks, it chaffs the international community that President Trump wants to not participate in and has pulled us out of a lot of the international community, this world government they're trying to create. It chaffs them to no end. They can't stand him because he does not want to play ball with their world government. And so all throughout in these meetings, they can't stand the fact that China, the United States, and Israel did not participate. They want everybody on board because they're trying to form a world government. So the cooperation pledge basically made at this virtual meeting was designed to show that wealthy countries would not keep the results of the research from developing countries. And the meeting also represented a symbolic endorsement of the United Nations body in the face of Trump's decision to suspend the U.S. payments and condemn its leaders as subordinates of the Chinese Communist Party. So it's saying that, hey, even though the United States doesn't want to play ball with us, this is showing that everybody else is on board. And it says that China and the U.S. have accused each other of bullying and disinformation about the coronavirus outbreak, damaging efforts to secure cooperation at the G20. And the natural international institution, the G20 is to handle global health outside the UN. So instead of an ad hoc grouping of the 20 world leaders and global health figures that were on the call, and these were including German Chancellor Angela Merkel, French President Emmanuel Macron, and American philanthropist Bill Gates was on the call. And so you say, well, what in the world, Bill Gates? Well, I told you he's involved in ID 2020. All of this is like a huge cobweb they're trying to spin. And it's like this cobweb encircling the globe is what they want. They're trying to create a world government at the end of the day. The World Health Organization is one of the arms of the world government. Britain is going to co-chair a joint coronavirus global response summit on May 4th, aimed at raising funds for this vaccine research, treatments, and tests. Emmanuel Macron was on the meeting. They gave him a chance to speak, and he said, we will continue now to mobilize all G7 and G20 countries so they get behind this initiative. And I hope we will be able to reconcile around this joint initiative both China and the United States. They do not want them sitting on the sidelines. They realize if we're going to have a world governing effort, we've got to have China and the United States on board. He says, Emmanuel Macron went on to say, because this is about saying the fight against COVID-19 is a common human good, and there should be no division in order to win this battle. So they're standing behind the coronavirus situation, but they're saying that the only way we can solve this is by world government, a global governing effort. The World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, he said, we are facing a common threat, and the only way to defeat it is a common approach, global governance. He said, experience has told us that when these tools are available, that we have not been equally available at all. We cannot allow that to happen again. So, more than 100 potential vaccines are being developed, including 6 already in clinical trials, according to Seth Berkley, the chief executive of the Gavi Vaccine Alliance. He's the one this is the one I was talking about. He's the CEO of Gavi. He's the one who is one of the founders and sits on the board of ID 2020, the United Nations effort to number every human on the planet. So you see, they're all tied in together, spinning this huge web around the world. The Gavi, this vaccine alliance, is a public-private partnership that leads immunization campaigns in poor countries. Berkeley said it was critical that there was not a repeat of the experience in 2009 when the H1N1 vaccine did not reach developing countries until very late. This is a very key statement. They said that the U.S. mission in Geneva confirmed there would be no official U.S. participation, but it said it looked forward to the outcome of the WHO meeting. Well, we know from the prophecies of the Bible that the United States will not participate in the end-time world government. So there's going to come a time, and we're seeing it now when we're pulling out of a lot of these. Well, think of it, the coronavirus has went around the world, but yet the United States is saying, oh, you guys are coming up, a world government, you're coming up with a vaccine. We're not even going to participate in that. You see the gravity of the situation here? We're living through the prophecies of the Bible. Now, 5 pledges from the meeting that were agreed upon was to, and listen at the global governing verbiage in this. They want to provide access to new treatments, technologies, and vaccines across the planet. They want to commit to an unprecedented level of international partnership. They don't want nations closing their borders and working on it on their own, creating their own vaccines and this, that, and the other. No. They want international partnership on research, coordinate efforts to tackle the pandemic and reduce infections. They want to reach collective decisions. Not everybody reach their own. United States, don't do what you want to do. We need to reach collective decisions on responding to the pandemic, recognizing that the virus's spread in one country can affect all countries, and then learn from the experience and adapt to a global response and be accountable to the most vulnerable communities and the whole world. The heavily multilateral, in other words, everybody working together, nobody doing their own thing, everybody works together. The heavily multilateral tone of the pledges contrasts with many countries' immediate reaction to the outbreak when countries banned the export of their medical equipment, closed their borders. The international community, the world government, does not want nations closing their borders. They want open borders. They want a global government. You can't have a world government if everybody closes their borders. So they said, hey, we got to do something about this coronavirus situation, but we don't want everybody opening their borders, so we're going to make this a global effort. And they even tried to steal, that people have even tried to steal equipment from one another. So the degree of cooperation over the vaccine research has also been patchy at best, and coronavirus treatments should belong to the whole world, says the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. They're trying to establish a world government at the end of the day. Well, Bloomberg reported on the same meeting that Angela Merkel, Macron, that they were backing a $8 billion virus vaccine fund effort. The World Health Organization, which again is one of the arms of the world government, and leaders of France and Germany launched an $8 billion drive to accelerate the development of a coronavirus vaccine, stressing that it should be available to everyone with favor shown to without favor shown to that country that develops it first. The World Health Organization, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, they are stressing unity as the global health body comes under criticism from President Donald Trump and politicians elsewhere to try to put their own countries first. The international community, the world government, they cannot stand President Trump's America First policies. They detest him for that. They want everybody sucked. They want everybody on the phone call, and they would have wanted everybody on the phone call, and they would have wanted everybody to pledge allegiance to this vaccine system that they're setting up globally. But the United States said, nah, we're just not going to participate. Well, I'm excited about that. I don't want to participate in anything that has to do with world government. Now, the UK Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, he said earlier this week that Britons should be at the front of the line for any vaccine developed in the country, raising tensions with other European political leaders. While research in a single country may develop a vaccine, we need to make sure it's rendered accessible to all of those around the world. Of course, that's by Macron. He said that in the virtual press conference. And he also called on the U.S. and China to mend their relationship to fight the coronavirus. But President Trump last week said he would suspend American contributions to the World Health Organization because the organization has been too soft on China, where the virus was first identified. So, again, he said, I hope we're going to be able to reconcile the U.S.-China situation. Macron went on to say that no divide should prevent us from winning the battle. The European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, she's going to host a virtual summit meeting on May 4th, at which these world leaders are going to push to raise the 7.5 to 8 billion euros. Angela Merkel, the leader of Germany, she also called for new methods of production and new production capacities in as many places as possible around the globe. I have a friend that works at a college here out on the East Coast, and she told me that they're one of the ones that are developing one of these vaccines. So I know all this stuff is real, what they're talking about. This is not pie in the sky. This is really happening here. And so Germany said that they will make a substantial contribution to this. And she said, I want to urge everyone, whether in politics or in the private sector, to support us in closing this funding gap. They want everybody on board. They said, we're talking here about a global public property, about producing this vaccine and then distributing it around the world. Well, Melinda Gates, Bill Gates' wife, head of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and a key supporter of the public health efforts, she was one of the key speakers at the press conference, but no U.S. politicians participated at all. Other political leaders who took part in the briefing included Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, Italian Prime Minister Conte, South African President Ramaphosa, and UK Foreign Minister Dominic Raab, and then UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also made a brief appearance. He said, we're in a fight for our lives, and we are in it together. We will come out of this stronger together. So what do we glean from all of this? Well, They're saying, hey, this is how we're going to solve it. This is their solution. We need global solutions to global problems, which means global governance is needed, right? I mean, ask yourself that question. We need a global governance, right? Wrong. We absolutely do not need a world government. We need sovereign nations working alongside each other that, you know, let's say the United States comes up with a vaccine and China calls us and says, hey, can you help us? I mean, can we get some of your vaccine? We say, sure, and we help them out. We do not need a global government to work all that stuff out. We need nations that are helping each other out, sovereign nations. That's what we need. We need nation states. We do not need a world government. But the elitists, the globalists of the world are pushing for this world government. Now, why is that significant to end of the age? Well, of course, there's a prophecy in the Bible of a world government. In 550 BC, the prophet Daniel was given a vision of 4 beasts, which represent kingdoms or nations that will exist at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. Those 4 beasts, described in Daniel 7:4-7, and the modern nations they symbolize are a lion with eagle's wings, Great Britain and the United States, a bear, Russia, a 4-headed leopard, Germany, a 10-horned beast, the reborn Holy Roman Empire or the current European Union. That's what Daniel saw back in Daniel 7. Jump forward to Revelation chapter 13. John uses these exact same symbols of nations to describe the end-time world government. In John's account, the 4 separate nations of Daniel 7 have federalized into one large global governing body. And the interpretation, I'll give it to you when we get back. We're coming up to a break here. I wouldn't have time to give you everything. But we're going to talk about the world government quickly in Bible prophecy. And then we're going to get off into, does the World Health Organization really support mandating vaccines? Well, we're going to talk about it when we get back, because I think you're going to learn some things new in the latter half of the program.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank Endtime for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listen to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Experience the Holy Land in the most amazing way. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter for our upcoming Israel tour. For more information, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
So you say, well, where's the world government mentioned in Bible prophecy? Well, it's Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. And the interpretation would go something like this. John said, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his horns, which represent the European Union, were 10 crowns. And upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, Germany. Feet as the feet of the bear, Russia. Mouth as the mouth of the lion, Great Britain. And the dragon, Satan, gave him his power, seat, and great authority. Satan is behind these efforts to establish a world governing body in the earth today. Satan's going to be behind the efforts of the Antichrist. All of this ties in together. That's why you should never elect an individual into any capacity that would advocate for a world government, because the Antichrist is going to be over it eventually, and it's all driven by Satan. It's his effort to establish his kingdom on the planet. So Revelation 13, 1 and 2 is a 2,000-year-old prophecy of the world government that is currently being established. Now, we're living through this, everybody. Global elites have been for decades working to create this world government. And the goal is a global governing system that will control all aspects of every person's life on the planet. Now, that's their goal. They're not going to reach that goal, but that's what they're trying to do right now. That's why they don't want China, the United States, and Israel. They can't stand it that they weren't in on these meetings where everybody pledged allegiance to the system where they would immunize the planet. They don't like that. They want everybody involved. They cannot stand that President Trump would cut off funding for the World Health Organization. So the ultimate objective of this world government would be absolute obedience and allegiance. That's what it's all about. They say it's, we're just trying to help people that have had a tsunami relief and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, it's all about being a socialistic one world governing body, period. The outcome of these efforts, decades of efforts, is the formation of international institutions specifically designed to govern the planet. Two of these organizations are the United Nations, the seat of world government in the earth today, and the World Health Organization. That's why when President Trump stood on the White House lawn the other day, I think it was in the Rose Garden, and he said, we're going to cut our funding for the World Health Organization, I jumped out of my chair in my office. I felt like it, because I don't want any part of the world government in the end time. The Antichrist is going to be over that. Satan's behind all that stuff. So we don't want any part of it. So Revelation 13, the chapter describes Satan's end time kingdom. Revelation 13, 1 through 8 is the world government and its leader, the Antichrist. Revelation 13, 11 through 15 describes the world religion and its leader, the false prophet. Revelation 13, verse 16 through 18 is the global numbering system, the mark of the beast. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that the vaccines will administer chips. I know there's a lot of people talking about that. I'm not saying that today. I'm not saying that the vaccines will administer chips, that sort of thing, making this the mark of the beast. What I am saying is that the Antichrist will usurp authority over an already functioning global identification system that will enable him to implement the mark of the beast. This is why we have to look at the big picture to determine the fulfillment of these prophecies. Because it could start out on one platform, be vaccinations tied in with ID 2020, which creates a database that shows who has been vaccinated and who hasn't, a global database. Then it could be a numbering system to implement government subsidies, and then it could, a numbering system to give them access to banking situations and a job and this, that, and the other. So there's a lot of different platforms. What we look for is the big picture. The prophecy says that the Antichrist will rule over a world governing body, and he's going to have an identification system, a global numbering or a global identification system that he will be able to have authority over and use that to economically sanction people to get them to pledge allegiance to him and his world governing system. This could be one part of that. Setting up a global identification system to where you're dependent upon a number, and if you don't pledge allegiance to the Antichrist's one world governing system, they invalidate your number and you can't function in society. Now that's where we're headed according to Bible prophecy. But this is just one avenue where they could continue to establish this, because ID 2020 is part of it. That's the United Nations effort to number every person on the planet. The World Bank has a platform called ID 4D, and that's their effort to number every person on the planet, to give them an identification so they can get them involved in the banking system. So there's many different platforms, but what we're watching is the big picture. What's going on here? It's the identification, a digital ID for every person on the planet. That's what we're watching happening through all of this, whether it's vaccine related or whatever. So that's what I'm saying on the program today. I'm not saying, yes, Bill Gates is going to put chips in every vaccine and stick them in your arm. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying that this is one of the platforms that can be used to establish the global numbering system. Now, let's talk about, people have talked about on the radio and different things, mandated vaccines. Well, is that going to be the case? Will they go that route? Well, let's look at it. For instance, working alongside the United Nations is ID 2020. ID 2020 is devoted to providing a digital identity to every person on the planet. The original founders, Microsoft, i.e. Bill Gates, was one of the founding members of ID 2020. Also, I mentioned Gavi earlier in the program. Gavi is the Vaccine Alliance, and CEO Dr. Seth Berkley sits on the executive board of ID 2020. So all of this stuff is tied together. Bill Gates is involved in all the vaccines. Gavi is involved in all the vaccines. But they're also involved in the numbering system of the United Nations for everybody on the planet. You see how the big cobweb is set up? So you wonder, well, how's Bill Gates involved in all this? He's got tons of money, and he's involved in these global efforts to number people. They needed his technological mind, and then somehow or another, yet he got caught up in the vaccines. He's not a doctor. I mean, he's dictating things, but he's not a doctor. So I haven't really understood that one. If you figure that one out, let me know. So, according to the biometricupdate.com, this is back in September of 2019, ID 2020, and you realize this is what? So we're looking at, 6-8 months ago. ID 2020 and partners launched a program to provide digital IDs with vaccines. Back in 2019. A lot of you are just hearing about it right now. But the ID 2020 Alliance, remember, that's working with the United Nations to number every person on the planet. But the ID 2020 Alliance has launched a new digital identity. This is 6-8 months ago. They launched a new digital identity program at its annual summit in New York in collaboration with the government of Bangladesh and the Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, and new partners in government, academia, and humanitarian relief. So what does the program do? The program is used to leverage immunization as an opportunity to establish a digital identity, and it was unveiled. So you see the word leverage there. The program is going to leverage immunization. Hey, you want to get your immunization? You got to have a digital ID. They want to establish a digital ID, and it was unveiled by ID 2020 in partnership with the Bangladesh government's Access to Information, the A2I program. And the Directorate General of Health Services and Gavi was working according to the announcement. So, digital identity is a computerized record of who a person is, and it's stored in a registry. And it is used, in this case, to keep track of who has received a vaccination. Now, this is what they're wanting to do. They're wanting to number everybody on the planet, ID 2020, and they're wanting to say, okay, now we need to implement this so we can track who all's been vaccinated. And so they're kind of killing two birds with one stone here. I don't know if they even, I got to be honest with you. This is between me and you, so don't tell anybody else. But I got to wonder, do they really even care about the vaccinations? I'm just wondering. Perhaps there are some people that do. But some of these global minds, some of them are just like, hey, you know, the vaccination is the That's the thing that we'll put out in front of everybody. That's the dancing puppets. But what's really going on is the numbering system, because the Bible prophesies that's what's going to happen. So they say that we are implementing a forward-looking approach to digital identity that gives individuals control over their own personal information while still building off existing systems and programs. And that's A2I. So the government of Bangladesh recognizes that the design of digital identity systems carries far-reaching implications for individuals and their access to services, livelihoods, and we are eager to pioneer this approach. So they're talking about the vaccines, then they dive straight off into the numbering system. And they said, we're eager to pioneer this approach. Well, what happened to the vaccines? In this article, the vaccines are the leverage. So Gavi CEO Seth Berkley, one of the board members of ID 2020, says that 89% of children and adolescents who do not have identification live in countries where the organization is active. We are enthusiastic about, he's saying, we're enthusiastic about the potential impact of this program, not just in Bangladesh, but as something we can replicate across Gavi-eligible countries, these underdeveloped countries, because you see, the developed countries, they already consider them numbered. The United States is considered numbered already in the eyes of the international community. So these guys are working with the 1 to 1.5 billion people on the earth that don't have a digital ID. You understand, good old U.S. citizens, in the eyes of the world government, we're already numbered. Let me let that one sink in for you. I found the other day an ID 4D map from the World Bank. They already consider the United States citizens numbered. Whether it's our Social Security number or maybe perhaps this real ID coming up, I don't know. But they already consider us numbered. We were blacked in as already numbered. So they say that they're going to replicate this across Gavi-eligible countries, these underdeveloped countries, providing a viable route to close the identity gap. So they say that digital ID is being defined and implemented today, and we recognize the importance of swift action to close this identity gap. And these were comments by ID 2020 Executive Director Dakota Gruner. She said, now's the time for bold commitments to ensure that we respond both quickly and responsibly. We and our ID 2020 partners, i.e. Bill Gates, both present and future, are committed to rising to this challenge. And then at the end of the article, they posted an update on March 26, 2020, and they said, we want to clarify the program is intended to allow people to receive vaccinations and prove that they receive it, not to track individuals as claimed by some conspiracy theorists. So they had to go back and actually remedy their article.
Does the book of Revelation frighten you? Do its symbols confuse you? For centuries, the book of Revelation has been misunderstood and misinterpreted. In Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ, Volume 1, Irvin Baxter unlocks the mystery of the book of Revelation with in-depth analysis and commentary like you've never heard before. This 10-part definitive DVD series and 268-page comprehensive commentary book covers the first 12 chapters of the book of Revelation, featuring on-location photography, classic artwork, and symbolic illustrations. You'll walk away with complete understanding and peace about the events happening during the final years on Earth. These comprehensive study tools, available for $299, will deepen your biblical understanding as you dig into the original intent of the book, answering the mysterious prophecies and symbols of the book of Revelation. Don't miss this special offer. Call now, 1-800-ENDTIME, or go to endtime.com to order. Call or go online now to get this comprehensive Bible study.
Man, I still got a lot of information to cover, so we're gonna have to really move quickly here. So you understand that in all of this terminology, all of these articles, that none of this is really possible in their eyes. Just this platform, just this one avenue they're going down, none of it's possible. The large meeting at the UN that Art Wilson went to, the efforts of ID 2020 to work with people if they don't get the vaccines, right? So let's talk about that. Some people have speculated, hey, this is going to be a mandated vaccine. Well, the World Health Organization recognizes the need to vaccinate everyone. And it's, remember, but all of this is tied in with ID 2020. So, Nature.com says, posted an article, the case for a mandatory vaccination. So in 2019, they said earlier this year, the World Health Organization named hesitancy to vaccinate as one of the 10 gravest threats to global health. As a result, governments around the world are considering policies that would make vaccinations mandatory. Over the past 5 years, legislators in Australia, France, and Italy have restricted school access for children who haven't received the country's recommended panel of vaccinations. Proponents of mandatory vaccination argue that despite what is arguably a removal of individual freedom, the ethical justification for intervention is twofold. The first argument is that the state is acting to prevent parents from making decisions on behalf of their children that unnecessarily expose them to the risk of infectious diseases. And through this lens, mandating vaccination is akin to legally requiring that young children are secured in an appropriate car seat. Sounds convenient, doesn't it? Well, the second argument is that failure to vaccinate not only puts the unvaccinated individual at risk, but also anyone they come in contact with, including those too young to be immunized and people who, for medical reasons, cannot be vaccinated. So you can see they spin this big web, and they get you focused on the web, and then they start hammering you with these mandates. Now let's talk about making a mandate. They say in this article that governments can never force someone to get themselves or their child vaccinated. I mean, they're not going to show up at your house with a big needle. And it is a foundational principle of medical ethics that consent must be given for any procedure. The decision to make vaccination mandatory is therefore a decision to impose some form of penalty on those who do not follow the law. So a common penalty is to exclude unvaccinated children from schools because they are hot spots for disease outbreaks. And this has long been the case in the United States. Since 1980, all 50 states have formally linked vaccination to school entry. Australia, France, and Italy have taken similar actions. Australia also has legislation that withholds financial child support from the parent of unvaccinated children without medical exemptions. In Italy, fines are also levied on parents. So you could see that the World Health Organization they believe that everybody needs to be vaccinated. The World Health Organization on their website, they actually say that there are 10 threats to global health in 2019. One of those was vaccine hesitancy, the reluctance or refusal to vaccinate despite the availability of vaccines, and it threatens to reverse progress made in tackling vaccine-preventable diseases. So now aren't you glad as a United States citizen that we did not participate in these meetings that happened last Friday? I'm so thankful. And of course we know from the prophecies of the Bible, the United States is not going to participate in this. I am so thankful for that. But also beyond this, the World Health Organization, their own website says they have an immunization agenda 2030, a global strategy to leave no one behind. The IA 2030 envisions a world where everyone, everywhere, at every age, fully benefits from vaccines to improve health and well-being. You say, well, that don't sound too bad. If it has to do with the world government, I don't want anything to do with it. Period. Because remember, the Bible says that there's going to be a world government, and the dragon gave it its seat, power, and great authority. These people may seem nice, and they may say, well, we're concerned in your health, so we want to give you a vaccine. But remember, in Bangladesh, the vaccine is the leverage. What they're really trying to do is to give everybody a number. You see, it said in the article that I talked about that the vaccine was the leverage. So I don't want anything to do with their vaccine. I'm a United States citizen, and I am proud that our president says, we're going to defund you. We're cutting off our funding. I don't want to participate. And I was very thankful when Pastor Wilson told me, hey, the United States wasn't even in on a phone call. I was like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. I don't want to be in on their phone call because I don't want to participate in anything they got going. I don't care how much they put lipstick on it and paint it up and make it look nice. I don't want anything to do with it because it's world government at the end of the day. You've got to stand back, look at the big picture, and understand what they're trying to do to figure everything out. Now, it goes on to say that immunization is playing a critical role. Listen at this. Immunization is playing a critical role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals is the blueprint of the United Nations, a socialistic blueprint of the United Nations to govern every person on the planet. In the World Health Organization's website, it says that vaccination is playing a critical role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Well, if that's the case, I don't want anything to do with it. Immunization reaches more people than any other health and social service, making it the foundation of primary health care systems, and get this, and a key driver toward universal health care. That's what they want, universal health care for everybody. And they're saying that these vaccines are a big part of that. This makes immunization critical to the Sustainable Development Goals, the 2030 Agenda, to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Because health is so fundamental to development, IA 2030 will also contribute either directly or indirectly to 13 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So do they have an agenda? You better believe they have an agenda. It's a universal agenda. And I, Dave Robbins, do not want anything to do with it. I do not serve a world government. My country that I live in, we signed the Declaration of Independence, not the Declaration of Interdependence on a foreign government. I live here in the United States. We were based on Christian Judeo foundational principles. And so I'm thankful to live here. I'm happy to live here. And I do not want to be a part of the world governing body in the end time. I don't want their vaccine. They can keep their vaccine. If they all want to take it, that's great. But I don't want anything to do with it. So the World Health Organization also says that the global vaccine, they actually have a global vaccine action plan 2011 to 2020. So this didn't start yesterday. This didn't start at the beginning of the coronavirus. They actually state, and I'm quoting, the Global Vaccine Action Plan endorsed by the 194 member states of the World Health Assembly in May of 2012 is a framework to prevent millions of deaths by 2020 through more equitable access to existing vaccines for people in all communities. GVAP was the product of a collaboration and an unprecedented effort that brought together development, health, and immunization experts and stakeholders, the leadership of, here we go, everybody, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and others. It's almost a decade ago. Countries demonstrate, a lot of people say, well, man, Bill Gates started getting into this yesterday. No, he didn't. He's been doing this for a long time. Countries demonstrate a commitment. Now, this is the World Health Organization's plan, everybody. Countries demonstrate a commitment to immunization by setting ambitious but attainable national targets and allocating adequate financial and human resources to programs to achieve these targets. Ensuring, here it is again, just one thing after another, ensuring that their national immunization plans are fully integrated into national health plans. How would you like to imagine being in a country throughout the end time who has a nationalized health care plan, but you got to be immunized to be a part of it. You got to take the world government vaccine to be a part of it, or a series of vaccines. At that point, folks, the government will enjoy so many methods of control, it's going to be unreal. Anytime the government can give you something, money or whatever, or health care or this, that, and the other, there's always a million strings tied to it. Nothing's for free. There's no free lunch. So when people come along and promise you free college, free health care, free this, nothing is free. And so I don't want anything to do with their universal health care. I don't want anything to do with their universal vaccine scheme. I don't want anything to do with their universal world government, their vaccine 2020, ID 2020. I don't want anything to do with it. So I'm glad and happy and thankful to live here in the United States. Again, we did not participate in that meeting last week. I talked to Art Wilson this morning on the phone, and he was so thankful that we didn't participate in it as well. So now you can kind of get an idea of the big picture of just one platform. Again, I'm not saying that the vaccine's the mark of the beast and this, that, and the other. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you can see how they're trying to, it's like the tentacles of a huge octopus, and they're wrapping around the globe slowly but surely. They know they can't come on the scene today and dictate. So what they try to do is say, we have this huge crisis around the world, and so the way to do it is everybody pledge allegiance to the world government. The global government is going to be the solution. It's a global problem. It goes across borders. So the solution is don't close your borders, leave your borders open, but allow the global government to come up with a solution to help you. You say, man, you're pretty adamant on that. Yeah, I am. You know why? Because I know the prophecies of the Bible. The Bible says there's going to be a world government established in the end time just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. The United Nations is the seat of that world government in the earth today, and the World Health Organization is one of their arms that they use to do their bidding. So they don't have just one avenue that they're trying to create a world government with. They're trying to number everybody on one hand, ID 2020. They're trying to become the doctor on the block with the World Health Organization and say, we're coming up with all these vaccines. We've got a scheme put together. All the nations of the world buy into it. United States, you don't want to play ball? Well, we're upset with you. Emmanuel Macron says hopefully China and the United States can get their ill feelings toward each other worked out, and they can come on board as well. Well, sorry, Emmanuel Macron, I don't want to be a part of it. Thank you, President Trump, for cutting off our funding to the World Health Organization, and thank you, everybody, for listening. God bless.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.